welcome to the Amplifying Asian Voices series. This is our third guest speaker of the day here. So I heard of Julian at least a couple of years ago. I was listening to his podcast and I love listening to his podcast. Like I was hooked with it and all the people that he interviewed. And I connected with him a couple of years ago on LinkedIn. And recently we chatted, invite for his show here. So Julian is the founder and CEO of Pathways Affiliated, a recruitment marketing consultancy that helps companies enhance, accelerate, and modernize their talent acquisition strategy. Prior to starting his company, Julian led recruiting at Bottle Rocket, one of the premier mobile development firms in the world. And his topic today is about pivoting from corporate to entrepreneurship. So let's come in and go, Julian, and welcome him to the stage here. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be part of it. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said yes. So my first question to you is around, let me just scroll down here, tell us a bit about your cultural identity and upbringing. What's one cultural value that had an impact on you?
So I was born in the Philippines and came to the States when I was about 3 years old and pretty much raised here in the DFW area. If there was one specific value that I was given being raised Filipino here, it really was the connection to family that always seemed to go first. And it also seemed to be a consistent element within my group of specifically Filipino friends, right? So if there's one thing that has stuck with me up until this point, it was the connection and love of family.
Oh, love that connection, love, and family here. And what were some of your favorite family traditions growing up that are specific to your culture?
I don't know if it's specific to my culture. Maybe the way that we express it was specific to the culture, but it really was any holiday. So Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year, some of my most fondest memories were really just fellowshipping with my family during those holidays. I guess what made it cultural was the food that we ate, adobo, pancit, and all the great Filipino traditions. So
Nice. And growing up, was there anything that you felt pride or shamed about?
Wow. You know what, Diana? I'll be very honest with you. This is why I was reluctant to do this, because a lot of these conversational topics I have tucked away into my past because they didn't serve me. But I do remember very specifically growing up as a child, I had an insecurity about not being white. So whether it was a deep-seated insecurity about being accepted by my peers and just seeing physically I was different than other people, I always had that issue. And my mom would always tell me, like, whenever we go to outings, I would always say, Mom, are there going to be white people there? And she's like, yes, of course there's going to be white people there. It's because I had this deep-seated need to be accepted. So over time, I was able to sort of shed that, but only until we started having this conversation again did I recollect. But thank goodness I've been able to grow from that and now use it as an advantage.
Oh, I love to hear that. So that's interesting, right? But feeling accepted, belonging as well. I think that's what you're talking about. What would you say is the most commonly held misconception or stereotype about your cultural identity?
I'd say the biggest misconception that people had about me just because I was Asian is because they thought I was good at math and good academically, right? I was never really a good student. And I remember specific instances, especially in AP computer science, which is a huge mistake that I took, right? But I did it because all the cool kids were doing it. But I was computer science and all things math. And I remember there was this one person behind me, like copied my Scantron, like everything, right? And then the day after when we got our test, he looked just so completely gypped, like, dude, I like messed up. But I gotta say, as early on, that's like the most clear case of Asian stereotyping I think I've ever experienced, right? But lesson to that guy, don't cheat. So yeah, 100%. I'm terrible at math, and I'm not a good driver. It's like I have all of the weaknesses and none of the strengths of the Asian stereotype. Life's worst Asian condition, you know what I mean?
And what are some of those earlier life stories or challenges that give you the motivation to step up to do what you do today?
I love my family. They're my source and my strength. But early on, perhaps some of this insecurity came from me seeing how they were interacting. There was definitely a kind of insecurity my parents had because of their accent, right? And because of this, It's like, I don't know when it happened, but it happened. I promised I would never be that way. Like, I'd be able to assimilate into the culture, be proud of who it was that I am, and live my life all out in a way that made my family proud.
I love that. I love that. Oh, I can feel the power in you. Can I say, I just feel this power in you, Julian, and what you do.
Then you unlocked all of this like emotion in me, because I never talk about this stuff. I always talk about recruiting and business and personal development stuff like this, but you really hit a nerve with this. And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
grateful to you for reaching out to me and pushing me on this.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's so good. So let's move into your career journey. Let's talk about in terms of what are some of your key career highlights that led to where you are today.
So my background has been talent acquisition for the past 16 years. Agency and also corporate has been my base. Technology has been my core discipline. For the last 7 years of my corporate career before making this entrepreneurial leap, I led talent acquisition at a company called Bottle Rocket Studios. In 2016, while working at Bottle Rocket, I started my passion project, my podcast, Pathways to Success. Over time, that podcast turned into a media company. And by building a media company, I began to fuse these insights of talent acquisition and what I knew worked in media, branding, and digital strategy. On the other end of that is what formed my company. So I have a recruitment marketing firm that helps my clients obtain a superior advantage in talent attraction and recruiting by guiding them through a digital recruiting transformation.
Oh, I love it. You're so clear on what you offer too, as I'm hearing this. Like, this is such a great value prop of what you just stated here. And as I move into this hearings like that, tell us about a career defining decision that changed the path of your career. It sounds to me it's like this. Quit your job. I mean, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this.
I know that's a big piece of this topic. I'll let you segue organically wherever you let me to, but you asked the question, we're here now. But I made the decision to leave. I left Bottle Rocket in 2019, right?
Yeah.
That was a big decision. But the truth is, I've been entrepreneurial my entire life. I didn't have language for it, but my primary value was freedom and autonomy. And I started to see and looking at examples of people around me, the only people who had that were entrepreneurs, right? And I tried everything. I tried network marketing, real estate, internet business, all these things trying to just make money. But the thing that actually allowed me to actually succeed was to first focus on doing something that I love, developing a competence, and finding capacities on how to use that to serve other people. And that's what helped me escape corporate America and start my own business.
I love that. Let's type in this golden nugget. Number 1 is finding what you love. Number 2 is being competent, which is like being amazing at what you do in order to really help you start a successful business. So that's great advice here. What limiting beliefs did you have to really overcome to be more confident in owning your career or your business?
That I wasn't as talented as my heroes. You know, when you look at the people that inspire you, you see the further iteration of who they are, right? But what you didn't see was the process that they went through. And I think that's an important thing to learn about success. There truly is no such thing as an overnight success. That is what we celebrate in the media. But everyone, you, me, everyone else featured on this list are here because of the process that we went through. So that was the limiting belief that I had to overcome, that I wasn't good enough like my heroes that I've had. But the first step, the most important step to make is that first one.
Yeah, that first step. I have to tell you, as I'm listening to this, I remember when I came across your podcast, it was many years ago. I was really inspired by you because I think part of it was also like I didn't really see anyone like me who started a podcast or started a live stream, and so you were also my inspiration as well. I don't think I ever shared with you this, but also because of you, I also came. Yeah, so seriously, because I also came. Yeah. I come from a recruiting background as well, so I was like, I never really met a recruiter who also does what Julian does, but also being Asian as well. So you were also my source of inspiration back then. Like I listened to a lot of your podcasts. And so I was really excited when I found out that you decided to quit your job to start your own business there.
That's so much for me. And yes,
I never shared those. I guess I have to tell you now.
Right.
Yeah, how we all got connected here.
I'm humbled by that.
Yeah. Amazing. So my next question is, what's your best career advice for your younger and future self?
Know yourself. For the longest time in the very beginning and early in my career, I was trying to be like other people, things that I thought were cool. Like, oh, I was going to be this way or I was going to be that way. But I learned the most effective that the self can become is by becoming more of whatever it is, right? So as early on as you can in life, get to know your strengths, your areas of interest, and how that can intersect with value creation for others.
Oh, know yourself. That is so key. I always talk about the importance of soul searching before job searching. Like when you know yourself, you are more clear, more confident, more courageous in moving forward, and you just come across more compelling with your messages as well. And I can tell that just from the way you're communicating right now, it's very powerful, very compelling there. So let's move on to your topic, which is pivoting from corporate to entrepreneurship here. And I'm curious to hear from the audience. Any of you are considering making that pivot, type in like pivot there. I want to hear from you and let us know like what are some maybe your concerns or fears that you may have. So Julian, what steps did you take before you made the leap to full-time entrepreneurship? What were the biggest lessons learned?
So first off, I would say this. I started part-time. And like I said, although I was able to make the leap in 2019, I had been practicing entrepreneurship for at least a decade, doing different things. Like I said, internet business, real estate, network marketing was incredibly valuable to me. I was learning the skills of entrepreneurship, right? That's probably the biggest thing that I did. Now, what allowed me to actually sustain a business and find the right thing was first that identifying that intersection of what is it that I was really good at naturally and I had skill in, my areas of interest, and also the value creation for other people, right? Because around 2016, when I started my podcast, the reason I started that was a place of frustration in my career. I wanted to do something entrepreneurial that I didn't tie to success. I wanted to do it for the love of doing it. But that turned out to be the right kind of energy to put towards an endeavor to achieve a level of mastery. And when you keep doing that work, you begin to see these intersection paths. Like I got my first sponsor, then I got signed by a speaking agency. I got signed by an acting and modeling agency that eventually people were hiring me to teach them how to build their own personal brands. And then you keep walking this journey, you keep learning more about who you are and how you can help other people, which has taken me to the current iteration of my business today.
I love that. So taking those baby steps as well. Like you've always been entrepreneurial, trying new things to see what works to prepare you for this, big leap there. So let's talk a little bit more about during the pandemic here. Like, how did you pivot your business during the pandemic? Like, what was your business model before and your business model now?
So I had primarily a training and a speaking business, and within 48 hours, I lost 75% of my revenue. Right? So that was a big aha moment. What started to happen though, so of course, after the pity party, what started to happen though is I started speaking virtually. Interesting. So my geographic limitations were now gone, right? So I was able to work with clients all over the country now from my own living room, right? I never really liked doing that because I always liked the in-person kind of thing, but that was the first piece of like, wow, I can survive through this. But the big thing that happened during the pandemic is that my podcast, it turned into a media company, right? Because I had to focus on content creation at that time, I began to see and surround myself with other people who were successful in this media world, and they showed me how to monetize the show, right? And I was able to monetize the show, not through sponsorships, because I just didn't have enough viewership to sustain that model. I got lucky a few times. But how I was able to monetize the show was creating a media as a service company. Although I didn't have the most viewership, my interviews were top notch. So what we did is we created a media as a service model. So we created these social media packages that we would use and sell to our guests. And that's how we monetized the show, right? But from doing that, I learned that we could create content for the purpose of attracting talent. And that's when all of these concepts began to fuse.
That is brilliant. That is so brilliant to hear how you made that pivot and transition, like combining your strengths, your expertise, but also what I'm hearing, it's also what's needed in the market right now, right? The need for talent, how to help employers to attract talent. It's like just that balance between what you're really good at and what you have to offer, and that there's actually a demand for this there.
It is. And Diana, I feel like we have to hit on this one thing because a lot of like people who talk about there's never the rubber meets the road thing, right? But what was that first dollar that I made entrepreneurially that allow me to do this? It was a bottle rocket, right? Because what started to happen is I built this muscle of content creation in 2017. I was a year into the podcast, but something else I was passionate about was teaching other recruiters best practices of recruiting.
Mhm.
So I started making these videos of recruiting and then posting them on LinkedIn. And the first video I created, it had generated like 34,000 views in 9 days. And then something interesting thing happened, right? I started getting all these comments and these likes, and my phone rang. Fascinating. I posted this thing in this one channel, and on another channel, a human being called me as a result of it, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a need for this content. So I made more and more and more. And because the content I was producing on LinkedIn was so recruiting specific, I started to attract all of these recruiters from all over the country. And they started asking me for advice, for support, and also for coaching. So what did I do with that information? I took the top 3 training pain points that the market was literally asking me for. I turned it into a training product and I sold it into the market. And that was the genesis of my training company at the time, which I named after the podcast, Pathways to Success Training Company. So I crowdsourced the feedback and turned it into a product, and then I sold it.
Yeah.
That's how I did it.
Ooh, that's just so juicy here. I want to hear from the audience what your takeaway here. Like, I mean, one, and what I'm hearing is like that you tested it out, you put a video out there first that attracted attention, essentially. And you really paid attention to what are the pain points and needs to see, okay, how can I essentially productize, what the needs are here there. So that's amazing. Let's go to the next question that ties into, for those who are looking to pivot to entrepreneurship, is how can they really stand out and monetize expertise? What can one start doing now?
How can they monetize expertise? I think it would start with this. First, who is your customer? Don't start with you first.
Yeah.
Who is your
Yeah.
customer? The most valuable thing. Okay, so this is how I sold my first training product, right? Because the market crowdsourced feedback of what I thought were issues, right? But then I went to go talk to my customers to validate it. And then I said,
Yeah.
hey, if I build this for you and help you solve this problem, what is a good rate that we could agree upon to help you solve it? And that became like the first product. But once you sell it once, Mark Cuban always says, right, you just have to be right once. But when you're right that one time, it's not just that one person that has that issue. That one person represents a market. So my suggestion is this: if you're starting out, figure out who your customer is, what's their pain point, and then solve the problem for it and do it relentlessly well. Because if you can solve it for one person, you can solve it for a group of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Know your audience. I'm with you with this one. Like I've been in my own business now for 10 years. And a big part for me is really knowing your audience of what their pain points are, but who are your ideal audience as well, right? I think that's really key. Like even within that niche, like who are those ideal audience and what do they really care about? But also like what's that end goal, what they were trying to achieve there, so that you can get really specific with your marketing and messaging there. My other question for you, Julian, is how to overcome disappointments and failures. Because as we all know, when you start a business, there's always going to be challenges, rejections, how to deal with that. Can you maybe share some stories?
My faith has served as a very solid bedrock in terms of helping me interpret the adversities that I have in my life, right? So there's kind of 3 steps that I have for it that, trust me, this did not happen overnight, but it works every time. Number 1, I feel like when I experience a disappointment in my life, I feel this is happening for a very specific reason. What is the lesson it's here to teach me? And then once I process that, I begin to continue taking action in the direction of what I feel God is calling me to do, right? So the first is recognize the disappointment and process it, purge it. Number 2, know that this is here to teach you something and it is on you to learn the lesson. And then lastly, keep taking action in the direction of your mission and your purpose.
Amazing. That's so good. Okay. I know we have a little bit more time, Julian. I want to ask one more question, because you're a content creator. You have a podcast, you got a show, you're active on LinkedIn. I know I'm going to be talking social media with show here, my next guest speaker as well. But what's your advice in terms of some key lessons, like best advice in terms of starting to put your content out there?
You will attract the kind of audience that you educate, inspire, and entertain. What are the needs of your audience, and create information to solve their problems, right? Over time, you'll begin to see what works and what doesn't. Keep doing it, and then you will find your voice, right? Gaining a social following for business has nothing to do with vanity likes and everything to do with building a communication channel of people who know, like, and trust you. But to earn the following, you must serve them first. I think I lost
I'm
your
with
audience.
you there. Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm totally with you. To serve your audience, which is add value. I was talking about give, and that's going to attract your audience as well. Thank you so much for your advice. It was such a pleasure to have you today. I'm so glad that we got connected. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
It was wonderful. Thanks, Diana.
All right, you take care. Bye, Julian.